Oh, hey everyone. Now, have you ever woken up in the morning and gone, man, pirates were so cool. That is the crew pet that I want to go down. Well, if you've ever thought that, that is why I'm here today, because I will be role-playing as a pirate today. Booty hunting and all. Alright, I have a bit of a confession to make. I have no idea how to roleplay as a pirate. Now, all I really know about piracy is that the internet keeps telling me that I wouldn't download a car, and I have no idea what that means. Like what's a pirate even keep in his pockets? Because all I have is this. You know, that might actually come in handy. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, a 2013 game published by Ubisoft for PS3, Xbox 360, Wii U, and PC, as well as PS4 and Xbox One around a month later, and eventually getting released on Nintendo Switch and the ill-conceived Google Stadia. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush on this one. This game here was once my favorite video game of all time, and although it has since been knocked down, it currently sits within second place. Now, I first discovered this game back in 2015 after going over to a friend's house and watching him play it, and a couple months later, I was able to get my hands on this game as well as Assassin's Creed 1, and as soon as I began playing, I instantly fell in love with it. Over the years, this game has had a major impact on me, such as single-handedly getting me into history, and with a push from Battlefield 1 a couple years later, I became the history nerd you are presented with today. And I know I'm not the only one who adores Black Flag, as it is oftentimes viewed as the best game within the Assassin's Creed franchise. Okay, maybe fourth best within the Assassin's Creed franchise. As well as often being considered one of the quintessential video games of the 2010s. This praise mainly comes down to the game nailing that early 18th century Caribbean pirate setting, alongside a wonderful open world and a compelling narrative headed by an incredibly charismatic protagonist. Speaking of which, let's get into the story, shall we? Taking place in 2013, we play as an unnamed employee of Abstergo Entertainment who is tasked with sifting through genetic memories of pirates in a device called the Animus. That sounds way cooler than my day job, that's for sure.
Man, screw Delaware.
We're told that we're doing this to develop a new video game, but in reality, Abstergo is a front for the secret order known as the Templars, who are using these genetic memories to find a way to defeat their rival secret order, the Assassins. So after spending a little while walking around the coolest yet most off-putting office building I've ever seen, we finally get to begin going through genetic memories. This is Edward Kenway, our protagonist and a lower-class man from Wales who left his home and wife to strike it rich in the Caribbean, first as a privateer and later a pirate. Currently, Edward is shipwrecked in Cuba, where he meets an assassin who is looking to defect to the Templars. Sensing the opportunity for a quick buck, Edward kills the assassin, takes his identity, and travels to Havana in order to finish the delivery of an unknown ancient relic. Upon meeting up with the Templars, who happen to be run by Spanish Governor of Cuba, Laureano Torres, we learn that the relic we delivered is actually a vial, which can unlock a secret device called the Observatory, built by an ancient civilization of godlike beings called the First Civilization, which the Templars want to use in order to control humanity. However, in order to properly unlock the Observatory with the vial, the blood of a sage is required. Unfazed by this massive exposition dump, as well as the introduction of basically magic, Edward decides that he should go along with the Templar schemes and meet the sage which they happen to have captured. An ambush from the assassins, an attempted robbery, and the escape of the one and only sage later, Edward's cover as the turncoat assassin is blown, and he is placed as a prisoner in a Spanish treasure fleet headed for Europe. But with the help of other prisoners, including the slave-turned-pirate and absolute goat known as Adewale, Edward commandeers a ship and escapes as the entire fleet goes down in a hurricane. And now, with our very own ship, a new best bud, and a crew, we are finally able to find out more about the observatory. But that's gonna have to wait, because we have full access to the Caribbean Sea now. Things are about to get wild. And where else better to start than with murder? And with a title like Assassin's Creed, you'd expect to have a great variety of ways to do assassin-like activities, right? I got 2 types of blades and a gun. So, this game doesn't exactly have a whole lot of variety within its weapon choices, but that's alright because in the end, it's how you use the weapons that matters. Right? Now, beginning with our most basic weapon, we have access to a variety of different swords, which, if I'm going to be fully honest, all behave pretty much the same with only one major exception: the pistol swords, which are pretty much what they sound like, which is pretty cool. We also have access to the iconic hidden blades which the Assassin's Creed series is known for, which are wrist-mounted blades that are perfect for stealthily assassinating your targets from a vast array of hiding spots, but can also be used in open combat just to shake things up. However, if you don't want to get up close and personal with your enemies, then I recommend the much more varied ranged weapons category. To begin with the most popular, we have the pistols, which are certainly both the deadliest and all-around coolest ranged weapons, but it is also the loudest, which really is not ideal when you're trying to be stealthy. And it's in this situation where the sleep, berserk, and rope darts come into play. Now the sleep dart is boring because it does exactly what it sounds like, but the real fun comes with the other two. The berserk dart allows you to take out enemies by sending them into a frenzy in which they attack their allies, which, if you use them right, can take out large groups of enemies pretty effectively. Now, the rope dart is the odd one out, as it doesn't have any effect on the enemies aside from... Oh, Lord, I just hung that guy. Do you want to move on to something else? Because I want to move on to something else. So maybe murdering innocent guards isn't what you want to do with your time in Black Flag. Maybe you want to walk around Havana and sightsee. Well, my question for you is, why walk when you can parkour across the rooftops? Roads are for losers. So yes, the iconic parkour system which has made Assassin's Creed famous once again returns in Black Flag, and as always, it's just a blast. There are a vast multitude of ways to utilize this mechanic, which include avoiding guards, just having fun, staying stealthy, as well as the rope darts. Though aside from making for some really neat set pieces, the activity the game really wants you to use the parkour for is the viewpoints which are scattered around the world. These viewpoints serve as a way to encourage exploration by uncovering more of the map, but they also give you these massive panoramic shots which really show you the beauty of the game. Another great thing about the parkour system is that it isn't only useful in the cities of the game, as it also serves as a very effective way of traversal on the numerous uninhabited islands throughout the West Indies. Wait a minute, we're in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. How do we get to all these islands? Well, do you remember when I mentioned that Edward commandeered a ship to escape from the Spanish treasure fleet? Well, that ship is called the Jackdaw, and she is your gateway to the amazing naval combat which Black Flag offers. And like any good pirate game, of course you can raid other ships for all their cargo to your heart's content. All it takes is a few cannon shots from your multitude of armaments, as well as a little elbow grease, and you can board the ship and capture it by completing a small checklist of objectives. The larger the ship, the more objectives. Though no matter if you board a ship or just straight up sink it, you still get access to all the booty it was carrying, which helps you upgrade the Jackdaw both functionally and cosmetically. But let's be real, capturing a ship's where it's at, swinging around with cutlasses in hand, it's great. But what happens when you capture a ship? What do you get to do with it? Well, you can do one of three things. First is repairing the Jackdaw, which is exactly what it sounds like and a great way to make sure you're able to stay in the fight if there's more ships to be sent to Davy Jones's locker. Your second option is to lower your wanted level, which is important because the more ships you attack, the more your wanted level increases, which means that pirate hunters will come after you. Whether or not you fear this or view it as fresh meat, I'll leave that for you to decide. And our third option is to send them the Kenway's fleet. What's that, you might ask? Great question! Kenway's fleet is essentially a minigame in which you can send your fleet of captured ships out on expeditions in order to earn you some extra money and even some unique rewards, such as outfits or ship cosmetics. And now that you know what you can do with the naval gameplay, you might want a real challenge. Well, if you do, try attacking the 4 legendary ships located in the 4 corners of the map. These ships are called legendary for a reason, because if you are not prepared, they will easily sink you. But if you're prepared, you are in for some big ol' rewards. But okay, moving away from ship raiding, what other activities do you have access to while navigating the briny blue? Well, you see that whale right there? You want to kill it? Sweet, that's why harpooning is an option. You can find areas throughout the Caribbean in which you can hunt sea creatures such as sharks and whales, and yeah, that's about it, but it's still pretty neat, if not a little underutilized. Another somewhat underutilized activity while on the high seas is diving. Throughout the world, you can find these shipwrecks, which by utilizing the diving bell, you can explore to your heart's content. Or I suppose lungs' content. I mean, this is a really cool feature, don't get me wrong, but beyond a couple of treasure chests, there just isn't a whole lot to do besides getting eaten by those sharks you were trying to harpoon. And now that I've given quite a few positives and a couple positives which are underutilized for the naval gameplay, I'm going to even it out with some negatives. First off is the glitches, because despite Black Flag being a fairly stable game all things considered, the naval gameplay could have used some refinement, especially when it comes to boarding ships. And second off is the overabundance of tailing missions within the game, which isn't so much an issue with the naval gameplay until we get to the stupid ship tailing missions, which are by far the worst and most boring mission type found within the game. And of course, with over 50% of Black Flag missions consisting of tailing missions, ship tailing makes up a fair bit of that percentage. Well, that was weird. Anyway, so after presenting you with all these grievances I have with the naval gameplay, you might begin to wonder why I love it as much as I do. Well, I have two words for you. Sea shanties. These songs can be sung by your crew while you explore the Caribbean, and they just add so much atmosphere to Black Flag's naval gameplay. In total, there are 34 shanties for you to collect, and outside of the handful you start out with, you have to track down the rest. Upon finding one in a city or on a desolate island, it begins to float away, which leads you to complete a little parkour obstacle course in order to collect it. Man, words cannot describe how much I love these sea shanties. They add so much personality to the naval gameplay that I'm not sure it would be nearly as fun without them. The only way I can think to effectively explain how much I love these shanties is by taking a look at my Spotify and seeing that I have 7.5 hours of sea shanties on there. Now this may be considered, among other things, weird, but I honestly don't care. Anyway, now that we have the jackdaw at our disposal and shanties in our hearts, we can effectively traverse the West Indies. But what do all these islands have to offer? Well, to be completely honest, not a whole lot. A solid majority of these islands have nothing besides a couple of chests, which you get some money from, animus fragments, which to this day I still don't really know what they do, and an assortment of animals which can be hunted in order to utilize the crafting mechanic of this game, which I never mentioned, for a good reason, because it's kinda dull. Though you do get some really cool outfits out of it, so I'll let it slide. Despite the fact that the chests and animus fragments are easily the most prevalent collectibles, some other collectibles are scattered around the West Indies, which make exploring so much more entertaining, such as the messages in a bottle, buried treasure, which you have to track down using an actual map, which is just really cool, or these things, which are called Mayan Stela, at least I think that's how it's pronounced, which you have to climb in order to complete a little puzzle, and if you complete all the puzzles, you get by far the coolest armor in the game, the Mayan armor, which is actually bulletproof. Although a great majority of these islands possess rather mundane activities, there are actually two types of islands which break this formula. First up are the plantations, which require you to collect a key from the enemy captain in order to break into the warehouse, which has all kinds of goodies for you to grab, such as money or materials to upgrade the jackdaw. And our second type of non-standard islands are the forts, which by using your ship to destroy the gun installations, you can dock, kill the fort commander, and then have yourself a brand new little pirate sanctuary. Now, all these islands are cool and all, but what if you want something a little more substantial? Well, I mean, you have the cities of Havana, Nassau, and Kingston to explore, which are all fairly cool and well-crafted colonial settlements. But we don't want more exploration, I hear you say. We want something different to do. Well, if this is what you truly desire, Black Flag really only gives you 3 options. First is upgrading your pirate outpost on the island of Great Anagua. Needing something new to spend all of your treasure on instead of weapons, outfits, or ship upgrades? Well, consider investing it here.
Starting out as a simple shantytown, a manor on the hill, with your help and most importantly your money, you can upgrade the settlement to include a harbor master, a really cool looking tavern, general store, brothel, and bonfire. You can also upgrade the manor, which unlocks a guest house as well as some gardens. And although investing in Great Inagua is rather fulfilling, at least for me, you don't really get a whole lot of rewards for doing so, aside from being able to hire dancers and drunken pirates for free. Though, something which does reward you a tad more are the assassination and naval contracts. These contracts give you a target to kill in return for quite a bit of money, plus a little extra if you complete it without getting detected. Eventually, if you complete all the contracts, you unlock some rewards such as the stealth outfit and previously mentioned pistol swords for the assassination contracts, and the golden pistols for the naval contracts. Now, the contracts are cool and all, however, they're completely blown out of the water by the Templar Keys side quests. These 5 side quest chains are really the only narratively driven side content found within Black Flag, and you can tell that a lot of effort was put into these. Essentially what happens is that while Edward was posing as the assassin turncoat, he handed over a map to the Templars which revealed the location of assassin bureaus. So in order to correct this mistake, we have to help out a colorful cast of assassins take out their Templar pursuers. Though in classic Edward style, he is really only helping out because each of the Templars have a special key, which ultimately unlocks the Templar armor. I mean, it's a fine outfit, I suppose, but for me, I really just enjoy the fact that we get another story to play through alongside the main story. Oh, the main story, yep, that's a thing, isn't it?
So after getting totally sidetracked for a good solid while, we can finally get back on the trail of the observatory. Seeking any possible leads, Edward meets up with some old friends in the pirate utopia of Nassau, which include the real-life famous pirates of Blackbeard, Benjamin Hornigold, and James Kidd. And after a couple of shenanigans, Kidd points us in the direction of the ancient Mayan city of Tulum, which houses more information about the Sage. However, Tulum also happens to be the home of the assassins, and plot twist, Kidd is one of them. Another plot twist, Edward absolutely led the Templars to Tulum by accident, so the leader of the assassins tells him to go kick rocks, or something like that. So with all that done, Edward continues to seek out the Sage, which leads him to Kingston, Jamaica, where he finds out that, fun fact, James Kidd is actually a woman named Mary Reed. Oh, he also finds the Sage, who escapes. So after an unrelated stint in Nassau where we team up with even more famous pirates to defeat a British blockade, we head to Principe off the coast of Africa where we finally meet up with the Sage, who turns out to be another real-life pirate named Bartholomew Roberts. So together, Roberts and Edward finally make their way to the observatory where we discover that it was a device built by the first civilization as a surveillance station in which you can view where an individual is at all times. Insert a joke about the Patriot Act here. However, before Edward could even revisit the idea of making a quick buck off this thing, he is betrayed by Roberts and imprisoned in Kingston alongside Mary, who was also captured around the same time on something completely unrelated. So after spending a fair bit of time in prison, the assassins decide better late than never and finally show up and save Edward, and together they attempt to save Mary, who winds up dying during their escape. Overcome with grief from the death of Mary, alongside the deaths of other pirates which I may have glossed over but were directly or indirectly killed by him, Edward delves into a pit of despair and drunkenness, where he questions whether his motives to become a pirate in the first place were justified, alongside experiencing the full force of regret he feels about abandoning his wife in Wales. Didn't think we'd bring her up again, did you? This continues for a while until we're awoken by Adewale, who has been keeping the Jackdaw safe for us because he's just that cool of a guy. However, if the death of Mary wasn't enough of a punch to the gut, Adewale informs us that he no longer wishes to serve alongside Edward and instead intends to join the assassins. Though before he leaves, he invites us to return to Tulum, where we're confronted by the fact that they have yet to recover from the attack caused by Edward. And in one of the best scenes in the franchise, and in my opinion gaming, Edward comes to the realization that his greed has blinded him to the suffering that follows in his wake, and that ultimately this greed has either killed or driven away everybody he cares about. It is through this realization that he makes the determination that in order to atone for his actions, he must work with the assassins in order to stop the Templars from being able to control the observatory. This redemption arc for Edward begins with him killing Roberts, both as an act of revenge, as well as the elimination of the key for the observatory. With Roberts dead, we set sail for the observatory, only to find that the Templars have beaten us there. So, avoiding the trap set off by them, Edward finds and kills Laureano Torres, another character you probably forgot about because I know I sure did, successfully foiling the Templars' plans. However, not all that ends well, as upon meeting up with the assassins again, Edward learns that his wife has passed away in his absence, as well as the fact that he has a daughter who was born not too long after his departure from Wales. So, with the Templar threat eliminated and the observatory under the protection of the assassins, we are presented by a beautiful ending cutscene where Edward leaves behind the Caribbean and his life of piracy in favor of returning to Wales as an assassin and as a father. Oh yeah, and our office worker pal almost gets possessed and then nearly murdered. Yay, happy ending!
So, what do we talk about now? We already discussed the story, the gameplay, the naval combat, the world, and the sea shanties. I mean, I guess we can move over to the game's DLC now, right? Oh yeah, this game has multiplayer, I forgot. So, Black Flag multiplayer. It's certainly a thing. Now, I played a little bit of this mode back in the day, but I never really got into it. So, let's see if we can find a server in this bad boy. Oh my god, there's people! I mean, not enough to start a game, but still, I'm surprised. But anyway, aside from those two people, I couldn't find anyone else in the game, so we'll just go to the tutorial instead. The main goal of this online mode is to hunt down and assassinate another player while you yourself are also being hunted by another player. This unique cat and mouse type of gameplay encourages you to take the hunt for your target slowly and act like an NPC so neither your target nor your hunter can detect you. Overall, it's a pretty novel concept, and combining that with the fact that you can tell a lot of care went into this mode due to the amount of playable characters and the maps available, it makes it a bit of a bummer that you can't really play it anymore. Okay, that's enough about that. DLC time, and please excuse the drastic drop in quality of gameplay because instead of paying $15 to play the DLC on current hardware, I'm being cheap and playing the PS3 copy, which I haven't touched since 2016. Alright, now let's get into the DLC. So, Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry, the only major DLC release for Black Flag. Taking place in 1735, 13 years after the ending of Black Flag, Freedom Cry follows everyone's favorite slave-turned-pirate-turned-assassin and absolute goat, Adewale, who is on the heels of a Templar fleet. Upon attacking the fleet, he uncovers a mysterious package which the DLC ignores for a while because Adewale's ship goes down in a storm as he washes up on the shores of the colonial city of Port-au-Prince, the capital of the French slave colony of Saint-Domingue, aka the modern-day nation of Haiti. Anyway, upon awakening, Adewale witnesses the brutal way the French treat their slaves, which prompts him to make contact with the Maroons. What are the Maroons? Well, they are settlements of escaped slaves who, at least at the time Freedom Cry takes place, resisted slavery's expansion in whatever European colonies they happen to find themselves in. Anyway, the rest of the DLC focuses on Adewale's attempts to free the slaves in Saint-Domingue until he eventually assassinates the French governor of the island in a pretty cool sequence that forces him to leave Saint-Domingue. But not before revealing to us that the mysterious package was actually a box built by the first civilization and subsequently handing it off to the Maroons. And if you want any information on this mysterious lore dump, you get it by Assassin's Creed Rogue, which came out 11 months after the fact. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this story is pretty weak, especially coming off of the base game. Now, the ideas it has are pretty cool, such as exploring the prevalence of slavery within these Caribbean colonies, and having Adewale as a former slave be the main character is just really neat. But the story just doesn't really go in depth with any of these ideas. Now, I think the reason they did this is absolutely due to the DLC's length, which stands at a measly 4 hours, which doesn't give them a lot of room to do anything. And this theory is given credence due to the fact that the best part of Freedom Cry's story is absolutely Adewale himself, who is already an established character. Although a lot of the ideas surrounding him are underdeveloped, his charisma from the base game remains strong, and his backstory gives him greater purpose in the premise of the DLC. But anyway, enough with the story of Freedom Cry. What new gameplay does this DLC add in? Now, at its core, Freedom Cry retains the same gameplay as the base game of Black Flag, keeping the naval combat and on-foot combat the same, with the only exception being the addition of a machete, blunderbuss, and firecrackers. The main gameplay change comes with the world activities, as many new activities have been added in surrounding the liberation of slaves. This can come in the form of saving runaway slaves from slave catchers, liberating plantations, or capturing slave ships. All these activities can increase the number of slaves liberated as well as how many Maroons you've recruited, which leads to unlocking upgrades. The only world activity which Freedom Cry takes from the base game is the underwater exploration via the diving bell, which is actually way cooler in Freedom Cry because the only shipwreck in the game is actually that of the Jackdaw. That's right, sometime in the 13-year gap between Black Flag and Freedom Cry, the Jackdaw sank. How did this happen? I don't know, but we get the Jackdaw's figurehead by exploring the wreck, which is just really cool. Anyway, in conclusion, despite having a weak story and short runtime, I still enjoyed Freedom Cry, and if you enjoyed the base game, I'd recommend it. So, with all that being said, Black Flag is a wonderful game which blends fun pirate gameplay and wonderful stealth gameplay into a mostly faithful early 18th century Caribbean setting. With somewhere in the ballpark of 15 million units sold, this is either the best-selling game or one of the best-selling games within the Assassin's Creed series. Black Flag would become so popular that later games within the Assassin's Creed series would make rather overt references to it, such as Assassin's Creed Rogue, which has Ada Walleye play an antagonist role to the assassin-turned-Templar Shay Cormac. He also dies during his time in Rogue. I knew there was a reason I have reservations about this game. Side note, Rogue is pretty much just a reskin of Black Flag. Just felt like I should mention that. Another game which makes a rather overt reference to Black Flag is Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which sets the game's best level within a mansion owned by Edward upon his return to Britain, which is stuffed with all kinds of Easter eggs. Black Flag would even get tied in the older games as the antagonist and protagonist of Assassin's Creed 3, Haytham and Connor Kenway, are Edward's son and grandson respectively. Though this was actually done prior to Black Flag's release as a part of a book, Assassin's Creed lore is fun! Overall, Black Flag is a beloved game among the Assassin's Creed fandom, especially nowadays where we have games like This Vile Wretch and Valhalla, which have been rightfully criticized for having nothing to do with the previous Assassin's Creed games and completely ignoring the Assassin-Templar conflict, which the games are supposed to revolve around. Many argue that despite these games completely lacking the fundamental building blocks of an Assassin's Creed game, that's how they were intended to be because they are supposed to be an outsider's view of the story. And I'm going to call that excuse complete and utter bunk because Black Flag still contains the core building blocks of an Assassin's Creed game while also presenting the player with a very well told outsider's view of the story. Is this just me venting about the current state of the series? Absolutely! Black Flag was also the last game within the Assassin's Creed franchise to avoid major criticism upon its release, as all subsequent games had quite a bit of controversy surrounding them, such as being a rushed copy of Black Flag, being utterly broken, franchise fatigue, switching to an RPG format, being a god-awful game which words cannot begin to describe how much I hate, as well as having nothing to do with the Assassin's Creed series, also having nothing to do with the Assassin's Creed series, and well, this one was actually pretty well received. And although I enjoyed my time with all subsequent games, except for Odyssey, Black Flag still stands as the most recent game within the series to be more or less unanimously well received within the fandom, and I can absolutely see why. This game is incredibly fun and has one of the best stories in the series, which combining that with a dash of nostalgia is why I love this game so much and consistently rank it as my second favorite video game of all time. Well, that was one heck of a riveting time, and for once my strange line of queries actually paid off. But you know what? With the knowledge that Black Flag has given me, my own ambition, and sea shanties flooding my ears, I have decided that I am going to single-handedly revive the classic pirate profession. Watch out, world. I'm on to ya. So apparently you can't become an effective pirate when you live in a snowy, landlocked state. Sounds like government propaganda to me, but